Welcome back to Garden Studio. I'm Tessa Pinner, a designer and gardener in upstate South Carolina, Zone 8A. In today's video, I am going to show you how I'm planting my new mixed species live willow hedge, and really just my inspiration behind why I would want to do this in the first place. The genus willow is very broad. A lot of us hear the word willow and we think weeping willow by a pond, by a river, and that is certainly one kind of willow. However, there are so many others. And the kind of willows that I'm planting is not that big weeping willow kind. It's the shrubby kind that could become a tree if we let it, but that is not my intention. If you watched my last video, you may have heard me reference the term coppice. And coppice is where something is grown intentionally as a production crop, but it's a shrub or a tree that is cut every year for its useful canes or whips, which is the young, basically, growth of the branches each season. This is something they do in Europe a lot. They'll coppice certain areas to let light in and to be able to harvest wood in a way that doesn't strip the forest. Well, willow is something that can be coppiced very successfully as well. And each year it will produce a spray of new shoots that can be used for all kinds of decorative garden projects or structural garden projects. I put together this board just to kind of offer some visuals of the kind of things that can be done with willow. For now, I wanted cloches and tutors and other woven wattle edges for beds. Small things like that, but not as fine work as maybe you would find in a basket. That's really where this all started, is I just wanted some for some garden projects and I couldn't find anywhere local to buy them, and to ship something in long pieces, it just ended up being quite expensive for what it was, and the nearest growers that I could find were farms in the Northeast. So many states away from me. I'm in the Southeast US, and to bring something in like that could be grown here, to me just seemed kind of silly. A couple of months ago, I reached out to a farm in Vermont and I asked for advice. I explained what I wanted. Listen, I'm a home gardener. I don't have a huge amount of space, but I am interested in growing a range of species. One, so I can learn about them and share. Second, so that I can use the materials. And potentially if I have extra, I'll give it away, I'll sell it. I know lots of other gardeners who would be interested. And a third benefit is it's a renewable resource. So this is one reason I have tried growing my own non-running clumping bamboo, is because I wanted the renewable resource on my own property of being able to go harvest these canes and not having to buy them. So this was the spring I decided to make the jump and plant my own little patch of willow. On the advice of the farmer from Vermont, I did a mixture of species. You can see here that I have 5 different bundles. These are all going to be good for slightly different things. They have different coloration to them, and this one is obviously the thickest. So for the sturdiest projects all the way down to things that are a little bit more delicate. I'm going to walk you through today the process of getting them planted. It's really very simple, at least in theory, and I am excited to, over the next couple of years to revisit this topic and say, here's how it's going, and here's what I'm making, and that will all just take time. This way, I can have a series that documents from the very beginning, getting the sticks in, planting them in the ground, all the way through to hopefully having a very useful garden crop. It is willow planting day. I have been soaking these starts for a couple of days, according to the instructions that I got from the willow farm. And I am getting ready to cut them into sections, lay them out, and then get them into the ground. My instructions were to cut in thirds. So I am going to be looking for buds to cut right above one, and this won't be totally 100% even because of the spacing of the buds, but I'm trying to get close. I think I want to do patches of different kinds, so there is a unified view from afar where your eye can kind of see a bunch of something. So I'll keep these together so I know what I'm doing with that. And I mentioned this a little bit, I think, on a previous video, but my goal with this, along with getting, wow, the chickens are really talking, along with getting material to cut, is just to, for a lot of the year, shield some of the view into the chicken yard, because chickens are chickens. They scratch everything down to dirt. So there isn't really much to see behind the fence other than the chickens themselves in the coop. So I like the idea of having a little bit of a green veil in front of the fence. So my willows are cut up. My next step is to place the clumps along the length of this chicken fence and start planting. I drew a little sketch here of what I am hoping that it will look like over time. This whole boundary to the chicken run, it is going to be a mix of willow and a few other things. Now, most of the space is going to be taken up by the willow, but I also wanted there to be a few things either fruiting or blooming or with berries that would provide interest at other times of the year, some wildlife value, maybe a couple of evergreens on either side of the gate that just provide structure all year long. Because if I am really cutting these, there is going to be a season of a few months every year that there's not much to look at because I've cut it all down. So I wanted to make sure there was still some interest along this line. Again, my goal with it is very practical. It still will look like a mixed hedge, but I wanted to make sure, even just for my organization, that I knew what I was harvesting. So they are grouped together in like kind. I'm giving it about a foot off the fence, and my instructions were to basically bury it until you see 2 sets of buds. So I've got 1, 2. So I'm going to try to be burying it about 6 to 8 inches, depending on the length of the rod. And that actually looks about right to me. So I'm going to leave that one. My spacing instructions were anywhere between 12 to 24 inches. I'm not worried about getting an exact placement. I'm thinking basically the further apart, the more of a shape like this the plant will have and the more rods it will produce. So I think I do want to give it about 2 feet. There's my next one. And before I plant all of these, I'm just going to stick them out in their rough spots and see how I feel about it. And then I can move them closer or further away. The process for planting these is pretty simple. Basically, we're making a pilot hole with something that can be hammered. So I'm using bamboo. If I had a piece of rebar, that would be ideal, but I don't have one. And then coming in and basically just pushing it down as far as we can go. I've got 3 buds. I don't want to hammer too hard on this actual stake. I feel like that's pretty good. It's just a couple of inches and a couple of bud sets above ground. And then I'll move on to this next one. One thing to note with willow is that we don't ever want to plant them right near the foundation of a building, right near a drain line, because they do have very extensive root systems. And of course, you think about a willow by a pond. What is that willow doing? It is looking for water with all of its roots. So even with these other species of willows, it's just something to think about with the location. And some people may not have a suitable location. For me, where they're going is away from everything, and I think it's going to be totally fine. But it is something to consider. You don't want them cracking a drain line or breaking into a pipe that's going to your house. I wanted to show you all this website of an artist in the UK who works with willows. Lest you think it's all very kind of sweet and cute and cottagey, there are some really architectural, very interesting kind of sculpture installation uses that can be done with it. I kind of gasped when I saw a couple of these. It definitely expanded my view of what could be done with it, and I just thought it would be fun to show a couple examples. Not that this is what I am going to be doing. I will probably be limiting myself to very small scale things, but just the possibilities of the material as an artist to me are so interesting. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I know that doesn't look like a whole lot yet. When I took my husband out and asked him to water them in, he said, "Where are they?" And I said, "Look, they're these little sticks about 18 to 20 inches apart that are just barely sticking out of the ground." So it really is not an impressive or quick before and after, no Pinterest moment here. But hopefully with patience and with time, it will reward us greatly. And my hunch is that even a few plants, like maybe if you have a run of 10 feet to do something with, and you planted 5 of these, that could still potentially be a meaningful crop. So that is something I want to explore with this over time, and of course, stay tuned for more. I hope you have a wonderful week in your own gardens. Happy gardening.